Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I've learned as I've grown into the person that I am today. And I have, 5 meditation books, and I thought I would start today actually with the book Healing After Loss, Daily Meditations for Working Through Grief by Martha Whitmore Hickman. And I thought, while we're going through what we're going through right now, and, we're at home, and I think a lot of us are sensing a loss of what our lives were like before, and I think many of us are grieving what our lives were like before, maybe not even knowing that, And I have to tell a little story on myself, telling myself a little bit. Last night after I got done vlogging, I was just Googling stuff about what was going on, and which is kind of a downfall for me. I try to go and just read the news articles and go to the sources, like the World Health Organization and the CDC and things like that. But I was just Googling all kinds of stuff last night. And I Googled, as I'm sure other people out there have, how long will we be in quarantine? As if anybody really knows that right now, And it was interesting because I pulled up this article. I'm going to try to see if I can find the article again. But it was from this therapist, and she was talking about how she is working with her clients right now. I don't talk about this a lot on this channel. I talk about it in my vlog a little bit. I talked about it at length about a week ago, or I don't know, 3 or 4 nights. It's all the same day, man. As Janis Joplin once said, it just seems like one day is leading into the other. But what was I going to say? Oh, I don't talk about this often on this channel, but I'll say throughout the day, oh, that was a God thing, or that was a God moment. And what that means to me is I feel like my higher power put that in my life for a reason. So it was interesting, out of all of the articles that I could have pulled up, right? The article that pulled up was about this mental health clinician, this therapist, and she was talking about how she's working with her clients at this time. And that a lot of her clients are really, really, suffering from, their anxiety has gotten worse and their depression has gotten worse because of their being at home, and they don't know what's coming next or how long we're going to be at home. And so it was this really, really interesting article. If I can find it, I will link it below. And she went in there and she was talking kind of about the attitude of what she's doing with her clients is she's taking the attitude of a 12-step program, and the whole attitude of taking it one day at a time, right? Because for any of us, if you said to somebody, I can't remember the example that she uses in the article, but she said something to the effect of, if you said to any of us, okay, you're going to be, you have to quit drinking for a year. I'm just going to use my sobriety as an example. When I got sober, the idea of me never drinking again or not drinking for a year was it almost felt claustrophobic, if that makes sense. The feeling felt claustrophobic. And so when people would say to me, just take it a day at a time, or take it a week at a time, or a month at a time, I could do that. I could take it just for today and say, okay, just for today, I'm not going to drink, and I'm not going to use drugs. And, I've shared this story on here before, but there were moments that I was, I would be sitting at the counter, and in my first, that was my first apartment that I got sober in, but I would be sitting there, and I would have on one side, I would have all these dealers' numbers, written down. This is the day before cell phones, in the days before cell phones. And then I would also have all these scraps of paper that people had given me from meetings, that had their numbers written down on the back of, little checkbook balance sheets and stuff like that, or they would give me their business card or whatever. And I would call these people until I got a hold of somebody, and I would say to myself, oh, it's 2 o'clock. If I can, make it till 2:30, then at 2:30 I could drink. I would make myself these little deals in my head, or at 2:30 I can walk down to the liquor store and I can drink, or I can call one of my dealers. And, it was this deal that I made in my head. I literally, probably in my first 60 days, 90 days, there were whole days that I was going 15 minutes or a half an hour at a time. Honesty. I couldn't even make it past 15 minutes or a half an hour at a time. I had to do it in increments like that, So I'm reading this article, and she's talking about, people that are in 12-step programs, and they look at the world as, one day at a time, which I do, but I often forget that. I talk about, not borrowing trouble from the future and whatever. But I was sitting there, and I was reading this article, And I was like, I can do this. Like, I can do this thing, you know, like, I've been through a hell of a lot worse in 25 years, you know, God hasn't dropped me on my butt yet, you know, like, and, you know, like, yes, there's been tough times, and I've gotten through them, and I'm going to continue to get through tough times in my life, but I can take it one day at a time, you know, and it makes it a little bit easier. And, you know, I remember, like, one of my old sponsors, I actually called and talked to my older my sponsor that I had for a majority of my life today, and we had a real nice talk on the phone. And one of the things that he used to say to me was, like, whenever I would become overwhelmed with something, right, he would say, like, if a tree is in the woods, and it's like this, you know, huge tree, can you pick it up and carry it by yourself? And I would say, absolutely not. You know, and then he would say to me, but, like, if you took a, you know, chainsaw and you cut it up into smaller pieces, could you carry it in all at the same time? I was like, yeah. And he's like, okay, let's just do one piece at a time, right? Or there's, like, this old school recovery joke. It's not a very nice joke, but I'm gonna tell it anyway. And it's like, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? You know, and I think that that is really, like, right now for me, to just stay present in the present moment and be like, okay, stay centered. What am I doing today? Not even looking at tomorrow or next week or whatever, you know? I talked to a bunch of my friends today on the phone, and they're, like, all, like, they found out that school is not going to be going back in Indiana. I don't know anywhere else, but, like, school for the rest of the semester is done. And I was talking to one of my friends who, like, she's been, like, really having a hard time with, like, the e-learning and stuff, and she's like, you know, like, I don't know what I'm going to do because, like, I think it's May 4th they're not going back, May 4th or somewhere around the 1st of May, they're not going back, they're just going to end the semester. And, you know, like, and so we were talking about, like, turning that into a blessing, you know, and looking at it that way. And then I was talking to my sponsor about, like, how fortunate we are as people in recovery to be programmed to look at the world one day at a time. Because we really have been. Like, we've had to do it for so long. You know, most of us that have some long-term sobriety and people that are new, that are sober and new, they can look at it that way too because they're just practicing it right now. And I think it's such a phenomenal way to look at anything. You know, you don't have to be in recovery to look at things one day at a time or 1 hour at a time. And so I was thinking about that, and I was like, well, when I start getting stressed or I start getting irritated or, you know, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he was sharing about, he's like, you're going to talk about, you know, the idea of being irritable, restless, or discontent. He's like, I've been really experiencing that the last couple of days. I seem to fluctuate. And then my other friend today, she was telling me, she's like, you know, like, I'm, she goes, have you seen those memes of, like, the 6 stages of, like, how you're getting through quarantine? And it's, like, different stages of Britney Spears' life. She's like, yeah, every day I go through, like, or I think it's 9 pictures. She's like, every day I go through all 9 of those stages. She's like, I'm up, I'm down, I'm everywhere. She's like, I don't know, you know? And, I was like, yeah, I think it's tough for everybody. You know, I said, like, one day I'm completely calm and peaceful, and I'm, like, okay with it. And the next day I'm like, oh my God. You know what I mean? So I think to take it just one day at a time and be like, I'm not going to focus on tomorrow right now. I can plan for the future. I can start looking at things for the future, you know, like financial issues. And, you know, people are having to talk about unemployment and things like that and loans. And I think, you know, figuring out what you're going to do or, like, you know, I think that's important to do. And you can plan for that in today, but not obsess about it. And focus on what we're doing for today. And I think, you know, for me, I was like, this article, I really needed this reminder, you know? So if I can find it, I'll link it below. Okay, let's go and let's read. I don't know why I'm being pulled to this book today, but this is the book that I'm being pulled to at 8 minutes, 6 seconds. Healing After Loss, Daily Meditations for Working Through Grief by Martha Whitmore Hickman. Okay, let's see, April 2nd. It's beautiful in Indianapolis today, too, and I think that, like, the next week, we're supposed to have some rain, but it's supposed to be, like, in the 70s and in the upper 60s, and I'm like, okay, I can deal with that. You know what I mean? Like, I am somebody that definitely suffers from seasonal affect disorder, and I'm like, you know, like, when it gets, like, winter and gray, and I used to love all that, and I still do, but give me a sunny day on the beach any day, and I'm 100 times better, or by the pool. And so the fact that it's, like, pretty and it's sunny outside today, I'm like, okay, my spirits are lifted, you know? Okay. Whew, hold on a second. April 2nd. The deadliest of all things to me is my loss of faith in nature. No spring, no summer, fog always, and the snow faded from the Alps. John Ruskin. This kind of pervasive depression is certainly what life feels like often when we are living in the wake of grievous loss. It's as though we're standing still. If our own life will not move in the way we had wanted, we're unwilling that anything else move in its accustomed way either. We even resent that night and day follow each other without taking note of our anguish. How can they act out business as usual when our private world is in such chaos? It's probably unavoidable, after the first rush of grief and crisis, that from time to time we hold the world, the seasons, the days and nights, at arm's length. a kind of general anesthesia against life, because it is so painful to allow ourselves to feel. Then, bit by bit, the nerve endings begin to tingle again. We are, perhaps against our will, jarred into an awareness of life around us. We are aware again that it is beautiful, and that we can take pleasure and nourishment from the world, even though our loved one has moved on. My life is what I am given now. I will trust that the fog will lift and the mountains will be beautiful once more. And, I think it's such an appropriate meditation for what I was just talking about. It's like, right now, I think, in talking about, grieving of somebody that's passed, one of the things that is hard is, when you look at your friends and your family and you're like, yeah, but you have no idea what I'm going through right now. And they're, saying to you, oh, it's going to get better. And you're like, you don't know. You don't know. I think that's really hard. But I think one of the things is the unity in the fact that we're all going through this right now. There's nobody that doesn't understand this loss of what their life was like before. And I think in trying to connect with other people, and just having that conversation and being like, hey, how are you doing? Are you getting through this? I try to stay away right now from the comment that everything's going to be okay. And it's going to be what does it say here at the end, I will trust that the fog will lift and the mountains will be beautiful once more. I think I'm a big believer in hope, and I have a lot of hope right now that the world is going to turn around, and that hopefully maybe we'll all be, I don't know, have more gratitude when we come out of this. This is my biggest hope, is that I'll have more gratitude when we come out of all of this, and I'll take every moment in life and movies and music festivals and concerts and just holding somebody's hand, or, going into a public place, not being worried, being around family and friends, not taking any of that for granted ever again, that's my hope for all of this. But I also have to stay in reality and not just be like, oh yeah, everything is going to be great. It's going to be, you know what I mean? No, we have to stay in reality too. And that's where I think it's important for us to be true to our feelings. And, there are ways to move through our feelings. We can talk to people. We can call up friends. We can journal about it. We can get on forums online and talk to other people that are feeling about it. We can vent. We can stream of consciousness journal. We can exercise, exercise right now if you can get out, or even if you just do it in your apartment, turn on Alex was doing yoga the other day. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that we can, get out of our heads a little bit. And I also think that the one thing that's really a good way for us to get out of our heads, which is why I was doing this a little bit today, is calling some people that I hadn't talked to in a while, is, being of service to others, thinking of others, not just ourselves. And I needed that today because I was in my head, and I was like, okay, I need to get out of my head. I need to call some other people. I need to see how they're doing. I need to get out of my head today, And it did. It helped me for a little while to get out of my head. So, let me know what you think about that. I was going to read more meditations, but I think I'm going to stop at that. So I've got to go over now to my booktube channel and switch roles and read from my book, The Before, Now, and After Then. So if you didn't know, I'm reading this every day over there. Anyway, we're about halfway through right now. Anyway, I hope you guys are staying healthy. I hope you're staying safe. I love you, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.